Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Agata, and I'm so pleased to introduce my new guest today, which is Hanson Lee. And I'll maybe let him to introduce himself because he can do that the best, because he's an incredible person. And yeah, off to you, Hanson Lee.
Well, thank you very much for the compliment. I do blush very easily, so you might see me turn red throughout this conversation. But hello, everyone. I'm Hanson. I'm the founder and CEO of Daddy Life, which is the UK's largest content platform for modern day dads, a two-time international best-selling publisher, and we also run a DE&I consultancy for dads at work.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. What a great introduction. Yes, Anthony, I'm really happy that I came across you and this actually book, which is incredible. It's called The Growth Mindset Workbook. And tell us please something more about why the growth mindset is so important now for kids and in general for everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we started writing this book, I'd say probably about 14, 15 months ago, when we had a big epiphany really in the team that, when you and I were growing up, our futures felt very linear. And what I mean by that is we as children were expected to go to school, study relatively traditional subjects, learn in a relatively traditional way, then go on to higher education, and then, of course, become adults and go into the job market. And everything felt quite linear. There was a certain step-by-step process in terms of what was seen as success. And when we look at each of those stages now for our children, all of those things are in some level of flux and some level of disruption. The way that we teach our children, whether that's in school, whether that's homeschool, whether it's hybrid of both, what we teach our children in terms of the actual skills that's important for their present and their future is beyond just the traditional ways of learning and beyond just traditional subjects. I think we've seen that actually with more and more children now, wanting to be YouTube influencers as much as they do kind of more what you and I might think of traditional careers, that world and that future is constantly in flux. And the big epiphany in our team then was that, what's really going to inspire success for our children is really how we can provide them with a mindset of growth and a mindset of adaptability, because our children are going to have so many more career transitions than we've had through our careers, and we have been a generation that have already had quite a few different transitions. But with the future around technology, around so much is going to consistently shift for them. And so actually a growth mindset is so important, not just for how they think about growth now in their childhood, but absolutely how it creates the foundation for adaptability and growth, and how we can teach them about how their brain works and how to understand and reframe mistakes as just pathways to greater success, how we can really start to embed some of that mindset, not of no, but of not yet. And I think particularly for our homeschooling community, it's so important because we are our educators for our children. And I think as much as those sort of hard skills around maths and English and everything else, there are definitely those more holistic skills around mindset and growth that I think can absolutely provide a much more holistic education.
Yes, absolutely. So, as you said, that our generation, generations before, they were more like into linear education system. So when you finish a high school or university, you knew what you're gonna be doing for the 30, 40 years until you retire. Where now everything is more scattered. It's difficult to know what our children are gonna be doing as a profession, and very often they're
Exactly.
gonna be just changing very, very much and using the skills which they have to adapt to the situation which they're gonna actually face. And so, like one of the very big thinkers said that the very important thing about education is know how to learn, unlearn, and
Yeah.
relearn, because
Yes.
everything is changing, constantly changing. So this adaptability is very, very important. And so this is very important for children. And how would you think we can help parents who actually grew up in this linear way of thinking, progressing? How can parents help the children? How parents can help themselves?
It's a really interesting question, and actually, so a lot of growth mindset actually became more popular and started to become, I'd say, on the sort of consciousness of adults from a lady called Carol Dweck, who did quite a famous talk around growth mindset and has continued to do a lot of great work in the area. And so, actually, growth mindset is as important, really, for us as adults as it is for our children. And so that's why in the book we've got a number of exercises where we really encourage the adults and the grown-ups in our children's lives to really lean into some of those things. And so some of those things, we've had some really interesting feedback actually so far with the book, that some of those exercises, even though they're positioned for children, have actually seen the adults learn just as much in terms of a growth mindset. And so some of those activities, well, one of my favorite activities in the book is my big mistake interview, where we actually get the children to interview the grown-ups in their lives. With they kind of take on like a journalist kind of role, and they just get to ask the adults about mistakes, but framed in a way about what the adults learned about that mistake, how they progressed, what they learned through that. And I think those sorts of activities are really, really important, not just for children to see that the adults in their lives can make mistakes, but also what became of those mistakes in a more positive way. So you're absolutely right. I think there's a need for more and more adults to understand what growth mindset is. And we're starting to see, certainly with a lot of our consultancy work, a lot more organizations starting to really lean into growth mindset. And actually, funnily enough, one of the collaborators that we've had with the book, Gemma at My Growth Mindset, they work with schools, but they actually work with businesses as well around leadership and growth mindset. They were saying the same thing, which is that growth mindset is as important for the grown-ups and the adults in our lives to really start to understand that it's not just about a mindset shift. It's about fundamentally understanding some of the things we do day to day, but not necessarily thinking of them purely as negative things. I think there are instances in our lives where we have a fixed mindset towards things, and there are instances in our lives where we have a growth mindset. And that's not to say one is better than the other. There are situations where a fixed mindset actually is important. But I think the more and more we can get adults, grown-ups, and kids to lean into it and understand it, I think the more powerful we'll be, certainly as individuals and as families.
Yes. So I think with the grown-ups, it's more into ego. Oh, how I'm gonna confess to my child that I did a mistake, that I wasn't right, that I'm kind of flawed. So it actually reminds me of a situation with my son when I heard him saying that, "Oh, mom, but you know everything. You are the smartest person I know." Yeah, I need to get him to meet more people, definitely. And and one day he asked me if I could make him a scarf. And knitting is absolutely not my thing. I don't have patience for that. And I thought, oh, no, this is something I don't do. But then I thought, okay, that's a really interesting opportunity to show him that actually I don't know everything. Like kids actually believe that parents know everything and they are super knowledgeable. So we actually did a research together. What do we need to have to actually knit a scarf? So we watched tons of YouTube videos, how to start casting, and of course what sorts of needles we need, and etc. And when I did a mistake on the knitting, then he helped me to tear everything, so we had to start again. And yeah, he loves the scarf so much that he asked me if I could make him a hat. So again, the same process. We had to learn what sorts of needles we need to have, and how to cast, and how big the hat's supposed to be. So we had to start the process again a few times because it was too small or it was too big. So now actually he really loves those dodgy looking hat and scarf. And he said there are power stuff and hat. So if you see my son wearing dodgy looking red hat and scarf, and knows that this is because he really loves them. And this is how he got to really realize that everything's got a learning process, and we can really learn a lot if you really put our mind to it.
You're totally right. I think there's a couple of things immediately that I'm hearing from that example, which is one, I think it's important to say that, all parents really are superheroes, because our life changes so much when we become parents or carers. And I think there is a common perception that, I think particularly in the world of social media, where we're very quick to compare ourselves against others, and sometimes compare ourselves against others in a perception of what other people are doing versus a reality. And I think there is no such thing as perfect parenting, but I think all of us trying our best is absolutely perfection. And I think it's kind of, our kids will always see us, I hope, as the people that they can go to with questions, with advice, with learning. But I think what you've said there about actually showing that little bit of fallibility, that actually, mum doesn't know this, but actually, instead of it staying as a no, well, why don't we go on that journey together? And I think that's awesome. And I think, I could see a future trend where, you know, slightly misshaped or wonky hats might be a future, might be the future of fashion. You never know. It might have started from that moment. I think it's to say, not every instance, will necessarily call on that sort of journey. But I think what's awesome is that you've identified that particular opportunity to say, actually, let's reframe this in a way that we can go on something together. And who knows what could happen from here.
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, and so what sort of advice would you give to parents, how they can help their children to have a growth mindset? Then,
Well, so I think there's a lot around understanding what it is and what it isn't, first of all. So that's why in the book we've divided the book into 7 sections. The first 6 is all about the 6 principles of growth mindset. So firstly, understanding how your brain works. And I think when we've gone through the book with teachers, and we've got a few teachers and a few schools using the book at the moment in classrooms, the one piece of feedback that's always come back is actually how useful that's been as a start, because actually children starting to understand fundamentally what actually happens up there, and how up there actually processes the different functions of our body and our mind, is really, really powerful. And I think we then go through and talk about reframing mistakes. We talk about the power of yet. We talk about dreaming big. All those things are the principles of growth mindset that we've essentially adapted into different activities and creative tasks and stories. But we actually conclude the book with a 7-day journal. And the reason for that journal is we don't want people to just learn. And I think with anything in life, whether you're learning a new skill or a new language, it's about how you put it into practice, not just about learning the theory. And so, even though it's not just theory, it's very much about real world examples. That journaling part is just as important, because it's about the children starting to actually notice those things day to day. And actually, there are more free printouts available on daddylove.com if parents want to actually download for free more of those journal pages. So I think that for me is kind of, it's a slightly long-winded answer to your question, in that the way we've thought about the book is, I think, how we've seen and how a lot of the teachers that have worked with us have told us to sort of think about growth mindset when it comes to telling parents and carers about as well, which is how can we start to use those creative exercises, but also how can we start to apply it in the day to day. And your example with the red hat and your son is a great example of that, because you've embraced that challenge. You've understood that actually it's not just about no, it's essentially a not yet. And then you've not only said a not yet, you've actually then taken the next step to go, actually, how can we do this? How can we go on that journey together? And again, just to say, I think not every occasion will require that. I think we know as people, we can't say yes to everything, and that there is sometimes a real power in saying no. But there are certain things, I think, particularly for our children, where actually their mindset of understanding that no is not no, it's just a not yet, can really aspire them to something bigger and greater.
Perfect. Hanson, you are a best-selling author. Please tell us more about your other books, because you've got more books to tell us about.
That's right. So this is actually our 7th book in the series, and so the other books. So one of our bestsellers is called "You're Going to Be a Dad," which is the UK's best-selling pregnancy book for dads. And the reason we wrote that, it was launched last year, is we found that a lot of pregnancy books for dads are, ironically, still talking about dads as secondary parents. So a lot of books out there will say things like, just don't forget to put the beers away, for instance, and it doesn't really go much deeper than that. Whereas I think, what we've uncovered with Daddy Life, and really had the pleasure to write about over the last 6-7 years, is dads are going through a pretty large generational shift. When it comes to their parenting, a lot more are more actively involved, a lot more sort of challenging some of those stereotypes and some of those norms of being a kind of lazy parent or a secondary parent. That's not to say all of them are. I think there are still some people who are firmly in that category. But I think what's happened, particularly over the last couple of years in COVID, and more men and dads starting to see more of that opportunity to actually be maybe a different type of father en masse, as opposed to just a certain section of fathers, is that, you know, for books and the need for books to go deeper and to talk about things like mental health, to talk about things around dad's own challenges in specific weeks, in specific moments. You know, how can they be the best birth partner they can be? How can they best support their partner? How can they actually understand their own physical and mental challenges? So we actually interviewed 50 dads and new dads to be as part of the book. So everything from dads who've gone through IVF, or natural conception, or dads of twins and triplets, just to understand and bring a lot more diversity within each of those week by weeks. And so it's structured as a week by week for the first 9 months, and it actually goes through all the way through to the end of the first year as well. So that's one of them. We've got a hypnobirthing book for dads. So anyone who's going through the hypnobirthing journey, we've collaborated with a couple of hypnobirthing teachers on that. And we have a range of different gift books as well. So things around dad jokes, knock jokes, riddles, which is really, really popular. So it's good fun. But I think for us, we are aiming to represent that generational shift when it comes to dads and parenting. This book, actually, I would say, is definitely not just for dads. It's absolutely for mums and carers and anyone who really cares to invest in a growth mindset for their children. But yeah, I think that's the kind of where we are at the moment. And I think, just to reiterate as well, you know, there is a free digital version that we're making live for this group and for your brilliant group for our launch period. So certainly for the next month, very happy to have that and give that for free to the group.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hansoli. So where can we find you?
A few places. So daddylife.com. So DADDI life.com is the kind of main website and platform. You'll find us just at Daddy Life throughout the social channels. So that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are at Life Daddy, only because we couldn't have Daddy Life. We really must try and get that. And those are the main places. Otherwise, you can email me as well. I'm on dad@daddylife.com.
That's great. And where can you get your books?
So it's available on Amazon. It's a great Christmas present, I would say that, but probably a great gift really all year round. So it's priced at £12.49. It's available on Amazon.co.uk, and I'm sure we can probably leave the link as part of this chat and sort of thread or something. So yes, if you fancy a paperback, it's full color as well. So hopefully something to really inspire some great learning. Yes,
it's a really great quality book, I really have to say. And my son, who is sick today, then really want to let it go of this book because he really enjoyed it so much. Yes, thank you so much, Hanson, for your time and for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone. Bye.